When a fourth-grade teacher notices one of her new students wearing the same tattered baseball cap every day, refusing to remove it even during the national anthem, something about his fierce protection of it begins to trouble her. What started as a minor classroom disruption would soon expose a horrifying case of exploitation hidden beneath a simple blue cap. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe that sometimes the smallest observations can lead to the biggest revelations, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter. She couldn't have known that her simple curiosity about a worn baseball cap would uncover a nationwide trafficking operation, until she found the first hidden message that changed everything. Olivia Brennan had been teaching fourth grade at Westbrook Elementary for 8 years. At 35, her nurturing demeanor and unwavering dedication had earned her the respect of both colleagues and parents in the close-knit suburban community. With her chestnut hair usually gathered in a practical bun and warm brown eyes that missed very little, Ms. Brennan, Ms. B, to her students, had a reputation for creating a classroom where every child felt seen and valued. Her teaching philosophy centered around the belief that emotional safety was a prerequisite for learning, and she prided herself on recognizing when something wasn't quite right with one of her students. Her classroom was a vibrant space, with reading nooks surrounded by bookshelves, science stations with carefully labeled specimens, and walls covered with student artwork and projects. The large windows let in abundant natural light, and plants thrived on every windowsill, tended by student volunteers as part of their classroom responsibilities. This environment reflected Olivia's belief that children learned best in spaces that balance structure with warmth, expectations with encouragement. Olivia lived alone in a small 2-bedroom home just 3 blocks from the school, allowing her to walk to work on pleasant days. The house had belonged to her grandmother, and Olivia had lovingly restored it over the years, turning the second bedroom into a home office where she often worked late into the evening, planning lessons and researching new teaching methods. Her evenings were typically quiet reading, gardening in the small backyard, or occasionally hosting dinner for a few close friends, most of whom were fellow teachers. Principal Diana Wells often pointed to Olivia's classroom as a model for other teachers. "You have a gift for connecting with the kids who need it most," she had told Olivia during her last evaluation. "The way you noticed Carter's vision problems before even his parents did, or how you picked up on Zoe's math anxiety and adapted your approach, that kind of attentiveness makes all the difference." Olivia had accepted the praise with a modest smile, knowing that such observations came from years of practice and genuine care rather than any special talent. School counselor Marcus Chen had become Olivia's closest colleague and friend at Westbrook. They shared lunch together most days, discussing challenging student situations and brainstorming intervention strategies. Marcus appreciated Olivia's insights, often consulting her when trying to understand a student's behavior. "You see patterns that others miss," he told her more than once. "It's like you're reading a different level of the story." There had been discussions at recent staff meetings about budget cuts affecting social services across the district. The local Children's Advocacy Center had lost significant funding, and community resources for at-risk youth were stretched increasingly thin. Olivia had expressed concern about how these cuts might impact their most vulnerable students, particularly those from the transitional housing complex on the edge of their school's boundary area. One Friday afternoon in late September, Olivia had encountered a well-dressed woman speaking with Principal Wells in the hallway. The woman, who she later learned was Congresswoman Victoria Harlow, representing their district, had smiled widely when introduced to several teachers, but Olivia noticed how her attention seemed to drift during their brief conversation, her eyes constantly checking her phone. There was something performative about her interest in the school that left Olivia with an uneasy impression, though she couldn't articulate why. Fall had settled over the suburban community of Westbrook, bringing crisp mornings and leaves that transformed the school grounds into a canvas of red and gold. The elementary school, a sprawling single-story brick building constructed in the early 2000s, was surrounded by playgrounds and sports fields where children bundled in light jackets released their energy during recess. Inside, classrooms hummed with the rhythm of routines established in the first few weeks of school, students and teachers settling into the comfortable patterns that would carry them through the academic year. It was during this season of transition that Olivia first noticed something unusual about Noah Sullivan, a fourth grader who had transferred to Westbrook just after Labor Day. The boy was small for his age, with a quiet demeanor and intelligent eyes that seemed to absorb everything while revealing very little. His file noted that he had moved to the area to live with his uncle following what was described as a family situation in another state. What the file didn't explain was why Noah never, ever removed his baseball cap. But nothing could prepare Olivia for the mystery that would unfold around Noah's blue cap. The first time Olivia really took notice was during the Pledge of Allegiance on Noah's third day at Westbrook. While other students removed their hats as was customary, Noah kept his navy blue baseball cap firmly in place, pulling it lower over his eyes when she glanced in his direction. School policy typically prohibited hats indoors, but Olivia had initially allowed it, assuming the new student was still adjusting and finding comfort in the familiar item. "Noah," she had said gently after class, "I noticed you kept your cap on during the pledge this morning. At Westbrook, we remove our hats as a sign of respect during the pledge and anthem. Tomorrow, I'd like you to remember that. Okay?" The boy had nodded without meeting her eyes, his fingers unconsciously tightening on the frayed brim of the cap. "Yes, Ms. Brennan," he'd whispered, but something in his posture, a tension that seemed disproportionate to the minor correction, had given Olivia pause. The following morning, Noah again kept his cap on during the pledge. When Olivia made eye contact with him, silently reminding him of their conversation, he had ducked his head but made no move to remove the hat. After the third consecutive day of this pattern, Olivia decided a different approach might be needed. "Are you very attached to your cap, Noah?" she asked during their independent reading time, kneeling beside his desk to keep the conversation private. The boy's hands immediately went to the blue cap, adjusting it slightly. "My dad gave it to me," he said, his voice barely audible. Before I came here." Olivia nodded, recognizing that the cap might represent an important connection to his family. "I understand it's special to you. How about a compromise? You can wear it during regular class time, but for the pledge and when we have visitors, could you try to remember to take it off briefly?" Noah's eyes, the only part of his face fully visible beneath the cap's shadow, widened with something that looked like fear. "I can't," he said, then quickly amended. I don't want to. Please, Ms. B." The urgency in his plea surprised Olivia, but she didn't push further that day, making a mental note to check his file again for any religious or cultural reasons he might keep his head covered. However, the file contained no such information, and when she casually mentioned Noah's attachment to his cap to his uncle during a brief phone check-in, the man had seemed oddly dismissive. "Kids and their phases," he'd said with a forced chuckle. "My sister, his mother, was too soft on him. I'm trying to toughen him up a bit, but pick your battles, right?" As September turned to October, Noah's cap became a constant fixture, regardless of weather or activity. During PE, while other children changed into gym clothes, Noah participated in his regular attire, always with the cap pulled low. During art, when paint or glue threatened to stain it, he would protect it vigilantly, hunching over his work to keep the cap from harm. Even during the school photo day, he had become so distressed at the photographer's request to remove it that the counselor had been called, ultimately allowing him to keep it on for his portrait. "Have you noticed anything off about the Sullivan boy?" Olivia asked Marcus during their lunch break, approximately 5 weeks after Noah's arrival. The counselor paused thoughtfully. "Noah? Academically, he's doing fine, excellent math skills, though his writing shows some reluctance to express personal thoughts. Socially, he's on the periphery, polite when approached but doesn't initiate interactions." "Why do you ask?" Olivia hesitated, not wanting to make too much of what might be a simple security object. "It's probably nothing, just the baseball cap. He absolutely refuses to take it off under any circumstances. Gets genuinely anxious when asked. I've allowed it as an exception to the dress code, thinking he'd get more comfortable, but it's been nearly 7 weeks now." "Could be a security item," Marcus suggested, "or possibly related to appearance concerns. Some children become self-conscious about physical features, birthmarks, surgical scars, hair loss from medical treatments." "I considered that," Olivia replied. But his medical records don't mention any conditions, and his uncle made it sound like simple stubbornness. Something just feels off about the whole situation. Marcus nodded, respecting Olivia's intuition. Tell you what, I can schedule some check-in time with him this week. Nothing formal, just a casual chat to see how he's adjusting. I'll pay attention to the cap situation, see if I pick up on anything. Thanks, Olivia said, grateful for her colleague's support. It's probably nothing, but your instincts are usually worth exploring, Marcus finished for her. That's why you're so good at what you do. But nothing could have prepared Olivia for what she would discover the following week. The incident occurred during an ordinary science lesson about weather patterns. The students were constructing simple anemometers to measure wind speed, working in small groups with materials Olivia had prepared. Noah was carefully cutting strips of paper when a gust from the open window scattered materials across the floor. As students scrambled to retrieve the flying papers, one boy accidentally bumped into Noah, causing him to lose his balance. In reaching out to steady himself, Noah's hand knocked over a cup of water, which spilled directly onto his head, soaking his ever-present cap. "Oh no!" Noah gasped, freezing in place as water dripped from the now-sodden baseball cap onto his science worksheet. "It's okay, Noah," Olivia reassured him, quickly grabbing paper towels from the supply shelf. "Accidents happen. Why don't you take your cap off so it can dry? You can hang it by the heater."
No.
The boy's response was immediate and panicked, his hands flying up to hold the wet cap in place. "I'm fine. It's fine." Olivia noticed how the other students had paused to watch this exchange, and she gently guided them back to their work while handing Noah several paper towels. "You can blot it dry," she suggested quietly. "But sitting with a wet cap for the rest of the day isn't comfortable. Would you like to step into the hallway to fix it up?" After a moment's hesitation, Noah nodded and slipped out of the classroom. Olivia continued circulating among the other groups but kept an eye on the door, expecting Noah to return shortly. When 5 minutes had passed with no sign of him, concern began to grow. Had he gone to the bathroom? The nurse's office? "Zane, you're in charge for 2 minutes," she told her reliable class helper. "Everyone continue working on step 3. I'll be right back." In the hallway, Olivia checked both directions but saw no sign of Noah. Walking toward the boys' bathroom, she was about to ask another teacher to check inside when she noticed the door to the rarely used supply closet was slightly ajar, a thin strip of light visible from within. "Noah?" she called softly, approaching the closet. "Are you in there?" No response came, but Olivia thought she heard movement inside. Concerned that the boy might be in distress, she gently pushed the door open. What she saw made her heart drop. Noah stood before a small mirror that hung on the closet wall, his soaking wet cap removed and held in his hands. But it wasn't the cap that caused Olivia to gasp. It was what had been hidden beneath it. The boy's head was shaved completely on one side, and crude, uneven razor cuts showed where someone had haphazardly cut sections of his hair. More disturbingly, what appeared to be a series of small numbers had been marker written directly onto his scalp, partially obscured by the remaining patches of hair. Noah whirled around at her entrance, his expression transforming from surprise to terror. "Please don't tell," he begged, frantically trying to pull the wet cap back onto his head. "He'll know I took it off. He'll be so mad." Olivia carefully controlled her reaction, understanding instinctively that her response in this moment was crucial. "Noah," she said softly, kneeling to his level but maintaining some distance. "I'm not angry. I'm concerned. Did someone do that to your hair?" The boy's eyes filled with tears. "My uncle says it's to make me tougher, to remind me of the rules." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And so they can find me if I run away again." A cold weight settled in Olivia's stomach. "The numbers, Noah. Did your uncle write those?" Noah's gaze darted to the door, checking if anyone else might hear. "Not him. The men who come at night. They use different numbers sometimes. Uncle says it's a game," but his voice trailed off, and his small shoulders began to shake with silent sobs. Fighting to maintain her composure, Olivia made a crucial decision. Rather than pushing for more information that might further traumatize the boy, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "Noah, I need to take a picture of what's under your cap. It will help me make sure you stay safe. Is that okay?" After a moment's hesitation, Noah gave a small nod. With hands that she forced to remain steady, Olivia took several photos documenting the shaved sections, uneven cutting, and most importantly, the numbers written on his scalp. Then she helped him adjust his cap back into place, noting how his breathing calmed once it was secured. "Thank you for trusting me," she told him quietly. "We're going to go back to class now, and everything will seem normal. Later, I'll talk to some people who can help, but I promise you won't have to go home to your uncle's house tonight if you don't feel safe there. Can you be brave for me and finish the school day?" Noah studied her face, seemingly searching for signs of deception. "You won't tell my uncle about the cap coming off." "I won't call your uncle at all," Olivia promised, choosing her words carefully. "My job is to keep you safe, Noah. That's what I'm going to do." As they walked back to the classroom together, Olivia's mind raced with implications and necessary next steps. The numbers, the strategic hair cutting that allowed writing on the scalp while still permitting it to be hidden, the boy's terror at the cap being removed, these pointed to something far more sinister than typical child abuse. Her instincts screamed trafficking or exploitation of some kind, but she needed to proceed cautiously to ensure Noah's immediate safety and proper investigation. Back in the classroom, Olivia maintained a facade of normalcy for the remaining hours of the school day, though her heart pounded with each glance at Noah sitting quietly at his desk, the secret beneath his cap now a heavy knowledge between them. When the final bell rang, she casually asked Noah to stay behind to help organize science materials, a transparent excuse to keep him at school while she set her plan in motion. As soon as the other students had filed out, Olivia sent a text message to Marcus. "Emergency with Noah S. Please come to my room immediately. Bring Diana if possible. Do not contact guardian." While waiting, she engaged Noah in simple cleanup tasks, noting how his hands trembled slightly, but his demeanor seemed more resolved now that someone knew his secret. When Marcus arrived minutes later with Principal Wells, Olivia asked Noah if he would be willing to show them what was under his cap. The boy hesitated before nodding slowly. "Misby promised I wouldn't have to go back to my uncle's," he said, his voice small but steadier than before. "That's right," Diana Wells confirmed, her expression grave as Noah removed the cap to reveal what Olivia had discovered earlier. "You're safe with us, Noah. We're going to make sure you stay safe." What followed was a carefully orchestrated response that balanced the urgency of the situation with the need to protect a traumatized child from further harm. Diana called the district's legal counsel and child protective services while Marcus sat with Noah in the counseling office, gently gathering basic information without pressuring the boy for details that might re-traumatize him. "The numbers change every few days," Noah explained during this preliminary conversation, which Olivia was permitted to join as the trusted adult who had made the discovery. "Uncle says it's so I don't get lost, but I heard him on the phone once saying, 'The merchandise is marked as requested.'" The phrase sent a chill through the room. Marcus maintained his professional composure, but Olivia saw the flash of horror in his eyes. "Noah, you're being incredibly brave," he said. "Can you tell us how long you've been with your uncle?" 7 weeks, Noah replied. "After Mom disappeared. She said she was just going to the store, but then police came, and then these people from an office said I had to go live with Uncle Ray because he's my only relative. But I don't think he really is. Mom never talked about him before." The pieces were beginning to form a disturbing picture. A specialized unit of the police department arrived within the hour, including Detective Sophia Reyes, who had expertise in human trafficking cases. After viewing Olivia's photos and speaking briefly with Noah, she confirmed their worst fears. The numbers correspond to a known coding system used by trafficking networks, she explained in a hushed conversation away from Noah's hearing. Each sequence identifies the source of the child, their category for exploitation, and a tracking number. This is part of a much larger operation we've been investigating for months. "So his uncle," Diana began, her normally composed demeanor shaken, "is almost certainly not his uncle," Detective Reyes finished grimly. This fits the pattern we've seen, a child whose parent mysteriously disappears. Rapid placement with a previously unknown relative, through falsified documents. Then preparation for trafficking. The cap was to hide the marking until he could be transported, likely out of state or country. Transported when? Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Based on the most recent number series you photographed very soon. Possibly within days. The investigation expanded rapidly from that point. Noah was placed in emergency protective custody with a specially trained foster family experienced in caring for trafficking survivors. The man claiming to be Uncle Ray was arrested that evening when he arrived at the school demanding to know why Noah hadn't come home. Search warrants executed at his residence revealed evidence connecting him to a multi-state trafficking network, including false identification documents from multiple children and communication devices with encrypted messages arranging deliveries. For Olivia, the days following her discovery were a whirlwind of police statements, cooperation with investigators, and grappling with the knowledge of what might have happened had Noah's cap remained in place. She was permitted limited contact with Noah during the initial investigation phase, but received updates through proper channels confirming he was physically safe and receiving appropriate support. "You saved him," Detective Reyes told her during one debriefing session. "And not just him. The evidence we've gathered is helping us identify other children who have disappeared through this same network. We've already recovered 3 additional children and have leads on several more." The case gained national attention as the scope of the trafficking operation became clear. What had begun with one observant teacher noticing a student's reluctance to remove his cap had led to the unraveling of a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had been operating for years, exploiting gaps in the child welfare system to obtain vulnerable children. More disturbingly, the investigation revealed connections to influential figures who had facilitated the operation through strategic budget cuts to oversight agencies and deliberate understaffing of child protective services. When congressional hearings were convened to address these systemic failures, Olivia was called to testify about her experience and observations. "I'm just a 4th-grade teacher," she had protested when first approached about testifying. "Surely there are experts more qualified to speak on this issue." "You're exactly who needs to speak," Detective Reyes had countered. "You saw what trained professionals missed. You trusted your instincts when others dismissed them. Your perspective is invaluable." Standing before the congressional committee, Olivia spoke plainly about Noah's case and the warning signs that might have been missed had she not persisted in her concern about his cap. She advocated for better resources for teachers and school staff to recognize signs of trafficking, and for reforms to the systems that had allowed a child to be placed with a criminal posing as a relative. "Teachers often see children more hours per day than anyone else in their lives," she testified. "We notice patterns, changes, inconsistencies, but we need proper training, adequate resources, and systems that respond when we report concerns. Budget cuts to social services and child welfare agencies create the very gaps that traffickers exploit." As she concluded her testimony, Olivia looked directly at the committee members, including Congresswoman Victoria Harlow, whose campaign had received donations from businesses now implicated in the trafficking investigation. Every adult in a position of authority bears responsibility for protecting children. When we fail to prioritize their safety, whether through neglect, indifference, or active participation in exploitation, we become complicit in their suffering. The fallout from the investigation led to significant reforms. Emergency funding was allocated for child protective services across the country. New protocols were implemented for verifying the identity and relationship of individuals claiming guardianship of children. Most importantly, a specialized training program was developed for school personnel to recognize indicators of trafficking and exploitation. 3 months after the day Noah's cap had come off, Olivia received permission to visit him in his new placement. The boy who greeted her was almost unrecognizable from the fearful, silent child who had sat in her classroom. His hair had grown out evenly, erasing the physical reminder of his ordeal. More significantly, his posture was straighter, his smile genuine, and his eyes met hers directly without darting away. "Ms. B," he exclaimed when she entered the living room of his foster home. "Look at my science project." He proudly displayed a meticulously constructed model of the solar system, explaining the research he had done on each planet. As he chatted enthusiastically about his new school and foster family, Olivia felt a profound sense of gratitude that this bright, curious child had been given a chance to simply be a child again. "We have some wonderful news to share," Noah's foster mother, Elena, said as they sat down for the cookies and hot chocolate she had prepared. "Noah's biological mother has been found alive." Olivia's heart leapt. "That's amazing. Where was she?" "She had been abducted by the same network," Elena explained carefully, mindful of Noah's presence. "Apparently she resisted their attempt to take Noah, so they removed her. She was being held in another state. The evidence from Noah's case helped authorities locate the facility where she was being kept." Noah, who had clearly already processed this information, added, "She's in the hospital getting better. They hurt her for trying to protect me, but she's going to be okay. I get to see her next week." The reunion of mother and son would take time, as both needed to heal from their traumatic experiences. Noah's mother, Angela Sullivan, required physical rehabilitation and therapy to recover from her ordeal. But with support from victim services and the foster family who had opened their home to Noah, a plan was developed for gradual reunification. "She doesn't want me to call her mommy yet," Noah confided to Olivia during a subsequent visit. "She says she doesn't feel like she deserves it because she couldn't keep me safe. But my therapist says we're both victims and we need to be patient with each other." The wisdom in the child's words struck Olivia deeply. "That's very true," she agreed. "Healing takes time, and it's different for everyone." As the school year progressed, Olivia remained connected to Noah's journey while continuing her work at Westbrook Elementary with a heightened awareness of her responsibility as a potential lifeline for vulnerable children. The training program she had helped develop was being implemented nationwide, and she frequently conducted workshops for other educators on recognizing signs of trafficking and exploitation. In May, nearly 7 months after the day Noah's cap had revealed its terrible secret, Olivia received an invitation to a special ceremony. The district attorney's office had created a new annual award for civilians whose actions directly contributed to rescuing victims of trafficking, and Noah and his mother had requested that Olivia be the first recipient. The ceremony was small but meaningful, held in a community center with law enforcement officials, advocates, survivors, and educators in attendance. When Olivia stepped up to accept the award, a simple plaque engraved with, "For seeing what others missed," she was surprised to find Noah standing at the podium beside the district attorney. "Ms. Brennan saved my life," the boy said clearly into the microphone, his confidence a testament to his healing journey. "She noticed my cap when nobody else did. She didn't ignore it when I acted weird about it. She kept paying attention until she found out what was wrong." He paused, looking directly at Olivia. "Now 7 other kids are safe too, because she helped catch the bad people. And I got my mom back." At the mention of his mother, Noah turned to where Angela Sullivan sat in the front row. She had tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of gratitude and healing rather than pain. The physical injuries from her captivity were still evident in her movements, but her eyes held the same resilience Olivia had come to recognize in her son. After the ceremony, Angela approached Olivia with Noah at her side. "I don't have adequate words," she said simply, embracing the teacher. "Thank you doesn't begin to cover it. I just did what any teacher should do," Olivia replied, echoing her response to similar expressions of gratitude over the past months. Angela shook her head firmly. "No. Many people saw my son during those 7 weeks. You were the only one who really looked." As they talked, Olivia learned that Angela and Noah were starting fresh in a new city with robust support services and continued therapy. Angela had been offered a position with a non-profit organization that supported trafficking survivors, using her own experience to help others navigate the recovery process. "Noah's going to a school with a teacher training program based on your model," Angela explained. "The principal there was so impressed by your testimony before Congress that she implemented it immediately, without waiting for it to become mandatory." The ripple effects of that one moment, when a teacher had gently removed a soaking wet baseball cap and gasped at what she found, had extended far beyond one child's rescue. Systems had been examined and reformed. Vulnerabilities had been identified and addressed. Most importantly, other children would be seen and saved because one teacher had noticed what others had missed. 1 year after Noah had first entered her classroom wearing his ever-present blue cap, Olivia received a package in the mail. Inside was a framed photograph of Noah and his mother standing outside their new home, both smiling broadly in the sunshine. Noah's hair had grown out fully, and he wore a brand new red baseball cap, pushed back on his head to show his face clearly. The accompanying note read, "Dear Ms. B, guess what? Mom says I can wear a cap now because I want to, not because I have to. This one is my favorite because red is my favorite color. I'm getting all A's in science at my new school, but I still miss your class sometimes. The police found all the bad people who hurt me and Mom. They have to stay in jail for a very long time. Mom says what happened to us is helping change laws to protect other kids, so even though it was scary, some good came from it. My therapist says it's important to thank the people who helped when things were bad. You're at the top of my list. Mom and I are coming to visit Grandma next month. She lives near you now. Can we come see you? Your friend, Noah. P.S. Mom is letting me call her Mom again. It felt weird at first, but now it feels right." Olivia carefully placed the photo on her desk at school, next to her teaching awards and favorite student artwork from over the years. When students inevitably asked who the boy in the picture was, she simply said he was a former student who had taught her the importance of paying attention to details. The next month, when Noah and Angela visited her classroom after school hours, Olivia noticed immediately how different they both appeared, not just physically healthier, but carrying themselves with the freedom of people who no longer lived in fear. Noah proudly wore his red cap, but the most telling detail was how casually he removed it to smooth his hair before replacing it. A simple gesture that spoke volumes about his recovery. As they were leaving, Noah handed Olivia a small wrapped package. "It's for your classroom," he explained, "for the other kids who might need help someday." Inside was a children's book titled Seen, a story about being noticed when you need it most. Angela explained that Noah had worked with a local author and illustrator to create the age-appropriate story, which used the metaphor of a child wearing a magical hat to explore themes of hiding, being discovered, and finding safety. The book would be distributed to elementary schools across the country as part of the new awareness program. "This is how we heal," Angela said softly as Noah proudly showed Olivia his favorite illustrations. "By turning our experience into protection for others." Recovery hadn't been instant for Noah or the other children rescued through the investigation. The physical wounds had healed more quickly than the psychological ones. But the foundation for safety had finally been laid, allowing the slow work of healing to begin. The systems, too, had changed: new protocols, better training, increased vigilance. Small but significant steps toward ensuring no child would remain hidden beneath a cap worn in fear rather than choice. As Noah and his mother walked down the school hallway together, the boy reached up to take her hand naturally, comfortably, a gesture that would have been unimaginable during those terrifying weeks in Uncle Ray's house. Olivia watched them go, knowing that this wasn't an ending, but rather the continued unfolding of a journey toward wholeness that had begun the day she had taken off a soaking wet cap and gasped at what she found beneath it. Now Noah wore his new cap as a fashion choice, not as a concealment, a small but profound symbol of transformation from victim to survivor, from hidden to seen, from lost to found. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more. When a first-grade teacher notices one of her quietest students arriving at school each day covered in colorful stickers, she initially assumes it's just a harmless phase or creative form of self-expression. But something about the boy's fierce protection of his peculiar decorations begins to trouble her. What began as a curious classroom quirk would soon reveal a heart-wrenching story that had been hiding beneath cheerful, adhesive, smiley faces and cartoon characters. Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. And if you believe that sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we look beneath the surface, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that matter. She couldn't have known that removing a single loosened sticker would uncover a truth that would transform not just one child's life, but an entire community's approach to family support, until the moment she froze mid-sentence at what lay hidden underneath. Rebecca Winters had been teaching first grade at Hillcrest Elementary for 7 years. At 33, her natural warmth and intuitive understanding of children's needs had earned her a reputation as one of the most beloved educators in the small suburban school. With her wavy brown hair typically gathered in a loose ponytail and expressive hazel eyes that communicated genuine interest in each child's thoughts, Ms. Winters, Ms. Becky, to her 6- and 7-year-olds, created a classroom environment where even the most hesitant children eventually blossomed. She believed firmly that emotional safety was a prerequisite for academic learning, and structured her teaching around building relationships before pushing academic content. Her classroom was a vibrant space, with reading corners filled with cushions, learning centers designed for hands-on exploration, and walls adorned with both student work and carefully chosen inspirational messages. Unlike many classrooms where perfection seemed to be the unstated goal, Rebecca deliberately celebrated mistakes and revisions, keeping a special display called Our Beautiful Mistakes, where students could share errors that led to new understanding. The room smelled faintly of crayons and the essential oil diffuser she occasionally used to create a calming atmosphere during challenging transitions. Rebecca lived in a small but charming house about 15 minutes from the school, which she had purchased 3 years earlier after saving diligently from her modest teacher's salary. She shared the space with her rescue dog, Winston, a gentle golden retriever mix who sometimes visited her classroom as a reading buddy for struggling students. Though not originally from the area, Rebecca had quickly put down roots in the community, volunteering with local literacy programs and becoming an active member of her neighborhood association. Principal Catherine Daniels valued Rebecca's contributions to Hillcrest Elementary beyond just academic instruction. "You see teaching as nurturing the whole child," she had noted during Rebecca's most recent evaluation. "The academic progress your students make is impressive, but even more remarkable is how you build their confidence and emotional intelligence." Rebecca had accepted the compliment with characteristic humility, though privately she considered these social-emotional foundations essential rather than optional. School counselor Tomas Alvarez had become one of Rebecca's closest colleagues at Hillcrest. They frequently collaborated on supporting students with emotional or behavioral challenges, with Rebecca often being the first to notice subtle changes that warranted deeper investigation. Tomas appreciated her insights, often remarking that Rebecca noticed patterns in student behavior that others missed. "You have radar for the quiet suffering," he'd once commented. "The kids who aren't acting out, but are silently struggling." There had been discussions at recent staff meetings about the increasing economic pressures facing families in their district. The closure of a manufacturing plant that had employed many parents had created ripple effects throughout the community. More families applying for free lunch programs, increased housing instability, and rising stress levels that inevitably affected the children. The school had been working to expand its family support services, though limited resources meant these efforts often fell short of the growing need. One Thursday afternoon in late September, Rebecca had encountered an unfamiliar woman speaking intently with Principal Daniels in the hallway outside the front office. The woman, who she later learned was Ellen Martinez, the newly appointed director of the county's Family Resource Center, had smiled warmly when introduced, asking thoughtful questions about the school's approach to family engagement. There was something genuinely caring in her manner that resonated with Rebecca, particularly when Martinez mentioned her background in trauma-informed community support. "We're trying to shift from crisis intervention to prevention," Martinez had explained, "connecting families with resources before they reach breaking points, especially in communities experiencing economic transitions like yours." This philosophy aligned perfectly with Rebecca's own beliefs about supporting children by supporting their families, and she'd left the brief interaction feeling cautiously hopeful about potential new partnerships that might benefit her students. Autumn had settled over the small town of Hillcrest, bringing crisp mornings and golden afternoons that transformed the elementary school's playground into a canvas of red and orange leaves. The school itself, a well-maintained brick building constructed in the 1960s, housed approximately 350 students from diverse socio-economic backgrounds. Inside, Classrooms buzzed with the energy of a new academic year now fully underway, routines established and relationships beginning to solidify after the initial weeks of adjustment. It was during this season of settling in that Rebecca first began to really notice something unusual about Mason Collins, a 6-year-old boy who had joined her class at the beginning of the school year. The child was small for his age, with wide blue eyes that seemed to take in everything while revealing very little, and light brown hair that often fell across his forehead. His academic skills were on grade level, though his reluctance to participate in class discussions made it difficult to fully assess his capabilities. His file indicated he lived with his father and grandmother, with no mention of his mother in the family information. But nothing could prepare Rebecca for the mystery that would unfold around Mason's stickers. The first time Rebecca really took notice was about 3 weeks into the school year. While greeting students at the classroom door as she did each morning, she observed Mason arriving with several colorful stickers placed somewhat haphazardly on his t-shirt and arms. Cartoon characters, animals, sports imagery. The collection was eclectic and cheerful. Assuming it was simply a child's creative expression, Rebecca had smiled and commented positively. "Those are some cool stickers you've got today, Mason." The boy had offered a small smile in return but said nothing, quickly taking his seat and keeping his arms close to his body for much of the morning. The next day, Mason arrived with different stickers, these placed on his cheeks, the backs of his hands, and again on his clothing. The pattern continued daily, new stickers in different locations, though Rebecca noticed they were never random. The placement seemed deliberate, with stickers often clustered in specific areas or arranged in ways that suggested purpose rather than childish decoration. What particularly caught Rebecca's attention was Mason's behavior regarding the stickers. He became visibly anxious if they began to peel off during the day, pressing them back into place with careful attention. During physical education, he would request to sit out activities that might cause them to come loose. At lunch, he kept his sleeves pulled down despite the warm classroom, protecting the stickers on his arms. "Mason seems really attached to his stickers," Rebecca mentioned casually to Marissa Jenkins, the teacher's aide who worked in her classroom 3 days a week. "I noticed that too," Marissa replied. "Yesterday during art, he got really upset when paint almost got on one. Most kids wouldn't care if a sticker got ruined. They'd just replace it with another." "Have you ever seen him without them?" Rebecca asked. Marissa shook her head. "Not since he started wearing them. It's like they're part of his uniform now." Rebecca's professional curiosity was piqued. In her experience, when children developed rituals or attachments to specific objects or behaviors, there was often meaning behind it, sometimes simply a developmental phase, but occasionally a response to stress, anxiety, or changes in their environment. Given Mason's general quietness and reluctance to engage socially, the stickers warranted closer observation. Over the next week, Rebecca paid more attention to the patterns in Mason's sticker placement. She noticed that on Mondays, he typically arrived with more stickers than other days, often in places that had been sticker-free the previous Friday. She also observed that while most were bright and cheerful designs, they sometimes covered reddened areas of skin that were briefly visible if a sticker became dislodged, though Mason would quickly replace them before she could get a closer look. "I'm wondering about Mason Collins and his sticker habit," Rebecca mentioned to Tomas during their weekly check-in meeting. "It seems to have started about a month ago, and it's becoming more pronounced." The counselor reviewed his notes. "Mason, quiet boy, lives with father and grandmother. No behavior issues, but minimal social engagement. I don't have any previous concerns noted." "What specifically concerns you about the stickers?" Rebecca considered how to articulate her worry. "It's the way he protects them almost desperately at times, and I've noticed some redness on his skin beneath them occasionally. Could be nothing. Maybe skin irritation from the adhesive, or maybe he's covering up eczema he feels self-conscious about. But combined with his social withdrawal, I can't help wondering if there's something more going on." "Have you contacted the family?" Tomas asked. "I sent a general getting-to-know-you email to all parents after the first week, but Mr. Collins never responded. I've tried calling twice to discuss Mason's social adjustment, but only reached voicemail. The grandmother brought him to open house, but she seemed tense." didn't engage much beyond basic pleasantries. Tomas made a note in his file. Let me check if we have any background information on the family from previous schools. In the meantime, keep observing the sticker patterns. If you notice anything that raises more significant concerns, let me know immediately. Rebecca agreed, though the conversation left her with a lingering unease she couldn't quite shake. Something about Mason's stickers and the family's limited engagement suggested a story beneath the surface. One she couldn't yet read, but increasingly felt she needed to understand. But nothing could have prepared Rebecca for what she would discover the following Tuesday. The revelation came during a rainy morning when students were having indoor recess in the classroom. Rebecca was circulating among different play areas, observing social dynamics and offering support where needed. Mason sat alone at his desk, drawing quietly instead of joining the games or activities. As Rebecca approached to check on him, she noticed a sticker on his forearm beginning to peel away from his skin, curling at the edges from moisture or wear. "Looks like one of your stickers is coming loose, Mason," she said gently. "Would you like a new one? I have some in my desk." The boy's head snapped up, his expression shifting from concentration to alarm as he quickly pressed the lifting edge down. "It's okay," he said softly. "I can fix it. It might stick better if we remove it and put on a fresh one," Rebecca suggested, reaching into her desk drawer for the sheet of animal stickers she kept for occasional rewards.
No.
Mason's response was uncharacteristically sharp, his body tensing visibly. "I don't want to take it off." The intensity of his reaction confirmed Rebecca's sense that these stickers held significance beyond simple decoration. Deciding to approach the situation more directly, she pulled a chair alongside his desk, positioning herself at his eye level. "Mason," she began carefully, "I've noticed how important your stickers are to you. Can you tell me about why you like wearing them so much?" The boy's eyes dropped to his drawing, a house with dark clouds above it, his pencil stilling in his hand. "They're just stickers," he mumbled unconvincingly. "Sometimes," Rebecca said, choosing her words thoughtfully, "people use special things to help them feel better when they're worried or when something hurts, like how some kids carry a special toy or wear a lucky shirt. Is that maybe why you wear your stickers?" Mason remained silent, but Rebecca noticed the slight tremble in his lower lip, a sign she recognized from years of working with children who were fighting to maintain emotional control. She waited patiently, giving him space to process her question without pressure. After nearly a minute of silence, he spoke so quietly she had to lean forward to hear him. "Dad says I'm not supposed to talk about home stuff at school." This response, with its implication of enforced secrecy, heightened Rebecca's concern. "At school, it's actually okay to talk about things that worry you or hurt you," she explained gently. "That's part of my job, to help kids with all kinds of feelings and problems, not just reading and math." As she spoke, she noticed that the loosening sticker had peeled further, revealing what appeared to be the edge of a distinct bruise beneath. Not the diffuse redness of irritation she had glimpsed previously, but the unmistakable purplish-blue marking of a significant contusion. Making a split-second decision based on her training as a mandated reporter, Rebecca spoke softly. "Mason, that sticker is really coming off now. Let me help you with a new 1-inch before he could protest." She carefully peeled back the curling sticker, ostensibly to replace it. What she revealed caused her to freeze mid-sentence, the replacement sticker forgotten in her hand. Beneath the cheerful dinosaur sticker was a clearly defined bruise in the distinctive shape of finger marks, the unmistakable pattern of an adult's fingers gripping a child's arm with excessive force. The coloration suggested it was several days old, which aligned with the fresh stickers that had appeared on Monday. Maintaining her composure with tremendous effort, Rebecca gave no outward indication of her shock, though her heart raced as the implications became immediately clear. The stickers weren't decoration or a quirky habit. They were a carefully implemented system for hiding physical abuse. "This looks like it might hurt," she said calmly, quickly placing the new sticker over the bruise to avoid further distressing Mason, who was watching her face with evident anxiety. "Does it?" The boy gave a barely perceptible nod, his eyes welling with tears. "I'm not supposed to show the owies," he whispered. Dad says people will ask too many questions. Rebecca felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. This was not a one-time injury or accidental mark. The deliberate concealment, Mason's trained secrecy, and his father's explicit warning about questions all pointed to ongoing abuse. As a mandated reporter, her legal and ethical obligation was clear. "Thank you for being honest with me, Mason," she said, giving his uninjured hand a gentle squeeze. "Would it be okay if I asked Nurse Jackson to check on this spot? She's really good at helping with owies." Fear flashed across his face. "Dad will be mad if I show anyone." "Your dad won't know today," Rebecca assured him, making a decision she knew was necessary. "And part of my job is making sure you're safe and not hurting. Can you be brave and trust me on this?" After a moment's hesitation, Mason gave a small nod, though the fear remained evident in his expression. With indoor recess still underway and other students engaged in activities supervised by Marissa, Rebecca was able to discreetly escort Mason to the nurse's office, texting Tomas to meet them there. The school nurse, Patricia Jackson, was a veteran healthcare provider with extensive experience documenting suspected abuse cases. Once in the privacy of the nurse's office, with Tomas present to provide additional support, Rebecca gently explained the situation. "Mason has been wearing stickers daily, and I just discovered they're covering bruises. I believe we need to document this and make a report." Nurse Jackson's expression remained professionally neutral, though her eyes reflected understanding of the gravity of the situation. "Mason," she said kindly, "Ms. Winters is worried about some marks on your skin. Would it be okay if I look at where the stickers are to make sure you're okay?" The boy looked to Rebecca for reassurance before giving his consent. With gentle efficiency, Nurse Jackson systematically documented what lay beneath the colorful stickers, a constellation of bruises in various stages of healing across his arms, shoulders, and back. Some were clearly fingertip-shaped, others appeared to be consistent with belt marks, and several showed the distinctive pattern of pinch bruises. Throughout the examination, Mason remained stoically quiet, though silent tears tracked down his cheeks. The methodical placement of stickers, each precisely positioned to cover a specific injury, revealed a level of planning that suggested this concealment had been going on for some time, possibly predating his enrollment at Hillcrest. "Mason," Tomas asked gently when the documentation was complete, "can you tell us how you got these marks on your body?" The boy's response was delivered in the matter-of-fact tone that children sometimes use when describing chronic situations they've come to view as normal. "Dad gets mad when I do things wrong. Sometimes he squeezes too hard or uses his belt. Grandma tries to stop him, but then he yells at her too." "And the stickers?" Rebecca prompted softly. "That was Grandma's idea," Mason explained. "She said I needed to cover the marks so people wouldn't take me away from her and Dad. She buys me new ones when the others get old." This addition complicated the picture, suggesting the grandmother was aware of the abuse but attempting to protect Mason in the only way she felt was available to her, rather than reporting the situation herself. It painted a picture of a household where multiple dynamics of fear and control might be at play. As a mandated reporter, Rebecca was required by law to contact Child Protective Services immediately. With Tomas and Principal Daniels now involved, they initiated the formal reporting process, providing the documentation Nurse Jackson had created and relaying Mason's disclosures. Given the severity and extent of the injuries, the decision was made to keep Mason at school until CPS representatives could arrive, rather than risking his return to an unsafe environment. "Will I get to go home today?" Mason asked as he colored quietly in Tomas's office, the adults having stepped just outside the door to discuss next steps. The question broke Rebecca's heart with its implications. This child, despite the harm being inflicted, still considered the abusive household his home and worried about being separated from it. It was a common response among children experiencing family violence, but understanding the psychology didn't make it any less painful to witness. "Today, the most important thing is making sure you're safe," she explained carefully. "Some special helpers are coming to talk with you and figure out the best plan. I'll stay with you the whole time if you'd like." Mason nodded, seeming to draw comfort from her continued presence. "Dad's not bad all the time," he said quietly after a moment. Sometimes he reads me stories and makes pancakes shaped like animals. This glimpse into the complexity of Mason's relationship with his father, the attachment that persisted despite the abuse, underscored the nuanced reality of family violence that Rebecca had learned about in her professional training. Abuse rarely existed in isolation. It was typically interwoven with moments of normalcy or even affection that created profoundly complicated emotional bonds. The Child Protective Services investigation moved quickly once the team arrived at the school. Mason was interviewed by a specialist trained in trauma-informed approaches to child interviews, with Rebecca permitted to remain nearby as a trusted support person. The details that emerged painted a troubling picture. Since Mason's mother had left the family approximately 8 months earlier, his father's drinking had escalated along with increasingly volatile behavior. The grandmother, financially dependent on her son and afraid of losing access to her grandson, had attempted to mitigate rather than report the abuse. Given the severity of the physical evidence and Mason's disclosures, emergency protective custody was implemented, with Mason placed temporarily with an experienced foster family specializing in trauma care. The father was taken into police custody based on the documented injuries, while the grandmother was connected with domestic violence support services, her own victimization having become apparent during initial interviews. For Rebecca, the days following her discovery were emotionally exhausting yet affirming of her professional instincts. She had noticed what others had missed, taken action when confirmation came, and potentially saved Mason from escalating harm. Yet alongside this professional validation came the heartache of knowing a child she cared for had been suffering silently for weeks, his cheerful stickers masking a reality too painful to confront directly. "You did everything right," Tomas assured her during a debrief session after Mason had been safely placed with his foster family. "You noticed the pattern, built enough trust for him to allow you to see beneath the surface, and took immediate action when you confirmed your suspicions. I keep thinking about how clever yet tragic those stickers were," Rebecca replied. "A perfect system, colorful, age-appropriate, constantly changing so they didn't raise suspicion. They worked exactly as intended until one started peeling off." This observation led to broader discussions among the school staff about recognizing potential signs of concealed abuse. Principal Daniels arranged for additional professional development focused on less obvious indicators that might otherwise be dismissed as behavioral quirks or personal preferences. The investigation expanded beyond Mason's immediate situation, revealing that his father, James Collins, had a history of domestic violence allegations from his former relationship with Mason's mother. She had left the state after their separation, apparently unaware of the escalating abuse her son was experiencing. When located and informed of the situation, she immediately began proceedings to regain custody, having reportedly fled without Mason due to threats against her life if she attempted to take him. One particularly significant development came through the involvement of Ellen Martinez from the County Family Resource Center, whom Rebecca had met briefly weeks earlier. Upon learning of Mason's case, Martinez mobilized her organization's resources to provide comprehensive support, not just for Mason, but for his grandmother as well. "The grandmother presents a complex case," Martinez explained during a case conference. "She was trying to protect Mason in the limited way she felt was available to her, given her own fear and financial dependence. Rather than simply villainizing her, we have an opportunity to help her become a protective factor if family reunification is eventually considered." This nuanced approach, recognizing that family dynamics in abuse situations often involved multiple victims with varying degrees of power and agency, represented the kind of systemic thinking that could potentially break generational cycles of violence rather than simply addressing immediate safety concerns. For weeks after Rebecca had discovered the bruises beneath Mason's stickers, she received permission to visit him in his foster placement. The transformation in the boy was subtle but significant. He made eye contact more readily, spoke more freely, and most noticeably, wore no stickers at all. His physical injuries had largely healed, though the psychological recovery would be a longer journey. "Ms. Becky," he exclaimed when she arrived, his face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "Look at my room here." He proudly showed her the temporary space his foster parents had created for him, a cheerful bedroom with dinosaur decorations, his favorite, she had learned, and a small desk where he could draw and read. "It's wonderful, Mason," she said sincerely. "How are you feeling being here?" "It's okay," he replied with the straightforward assessment typical of 6-year-olds. "Nobody yells or hurts me, and I get to talk to Mom on the computer every day." He lowered his voice slightly. "I miss Grandma, though. She told good stories." This simple statement reflected the attachment bonds that persisted despite the complicated family situation, a reality that would need to be carefully considered in any long-term placement decisions. As their visit continued, Mason showed Rebecca his current art project, a drawing of what appeared to be his ideal family, with figures labeled me, Mom, Grandma, and notably absent, his father. When she gently asked about this, Mason's response was illuminating in its childlike clarity. "Dad needs to learn not to hurt people," he said simply, "until he learns that he can't be in my picture." The wisdom in this assessment, separating the behavior from a permanent rejection of his father as a person, suggested a resilience and emotional intelligence that would serve Mason well in his healing journey. As autumn turned to winter, Mason's case progressed through the family court system. His mother, now established in a stable situation in a neighboring state, was granted temporary custody pending completion of reunification requirements. The grandmother, having engaged actively with support services and demonstrated a genuine commitment to protecting Mason going forward, was approved for supervised visitation. The father, confronted with the documentation of his abuse, had entered a guilty plea and was mandated to complete intensive treatment for alcohol dependency and anger management before any consideration of supervised contact would be possible. Throughout this process, Rebecca maintained her connection with Mason through approved school visits and by sending him weekly updates about classroom activities. When it became clear that he would be relocating to live with his mother after the winter break, she worked with his new school to ensure a smooth academic transition, sharing information about his learning style and strengths while being appropriately discreet about the circumstances of his transfer. The most profound outcome of Mason's case, however, extended far beyond his individual situation. Ellen Martinez from the Family Resource Center had used the case as a catalyst to develop a new county-wide initiative specifically focused on early identification of family violence, with a particular emphasis on situations where children or vulnerable adults might be concealing abuse. The Sticker Project, as it became known, named with Mason's permission, provided training for educators, healthcare providers, and community members on recognizing potential concealment behaviors and responding appropriately. The initiative also established improved coordination between schools, healthcare facilities, and social services to ensure that concerns could be addressed promptly and comprehensively rather than falling through bureaucratic cracks. During a professional development session implementing this training at Hillcrest, Martinez acknowledged Rebecca's role. "This program exists because one teacher paid attention to something that could easily have been dismissed as merely a child's quirky habit. That attention to detail potentially saved a life and has now created a framework that will protect countless others." The collaboration between the school and the Family Resource Center expanded beyond the Sticker Project, with new programs addressing economic insecurity as a risk factor for family violence. Resources for families experiencing financial stress, including emergency assistance, employment support, and affordable childcare options, were made more accessible through school-based referral systems. This preventive approach recognized that support at critical moments of family stress could potentially avert the escalation to violence that often occurred when resources and coping mechanisms were exhausted. By spring, approximately 6 months after Rebecca had peeled away that first revealing sticker, Mason was thriving in his new environment. Reports from his current teacher indicated he was making excellent academic progress, developing friendships, and showing no signs of the withdrawn behavior that had characterized his time at Hillcrest. Video calls coordinated between the schools allowed Rebecca to see this transformation firsthand, a more animated, confident child than the quiet boy who had hidden his pain beneath colorful stickers. Perhaps most significantly, Mason's case had resulted in meaningful change within his family system. His grandmother, now living independently and receiving supportive services, had become an active participant in a peer support group for family members affected by domestic violence. His mother had not only created a safe home for Mason, but had begun speaking at community events about the complex dynamics that often trapped parents and children in cycles of abuse. Even his father, while still facing consequences for his actions, had maintained consistent participation in his mandated treatment programs, a first step in the lengthy process of addressing the underlying issues that had fueled his violent behavior. During a follow-up training session for the sticker project, Rebecca was asked to share her experience with educators from other schools in the district. She spoke candidly about the moment of discovery. "When I peeled that sticker back and saw what was underneath, I literally froze mid-sentence," she recalled. "It wasn't just the physical mark that shocked me, though that was heartbreaking. It was the sudden understanding of what those stickers really meant, the systematic concealment, the burden of secrecy the 6-year-old had been carrying. In that moment, I realized that what looked like a quirky habit was actually a cry for help that couldn't be spoken aloud. This insight that children often communicate distress through behavior when direct disclosure feels unsafe became a cornerstone of the expanded training program. Educators were encouraged to look beyond surface behaviors to question what unspoken messages might lie beneath, particularly when children displayed unusual attachments to specific clothing, accessories, or routines. 1 year after Mason had first arrived in Rebecca's classroom covered in his strategic stickers, she received a package in the mail at the school. Inside was a hand-drawn card from Mason, showing a colorful rainbow with no stickers in sight. The accompanying note, written with the careful lettering of a now 7-year-old, read, "Dear Ms. Becky, Mom helped me write this. I don't need stickers anymore because I can tell people if something hurts me now. Thank you for looking under my stickers when I was scared to show you. Love, Mason." Also enclosed was a note from Mason's mother, expressing her profound gratitude for Rebecca's intervention and sharing the news that Mason would be starting therapy-assisted visits with his grandmother, who had completed extensive counseling and demonstrated her commitment to being a protective presence in his life. The package contained one final item, a sheet of stickers, but not the kind Mason had once used to hide his injuries. These were special recognition stickers for teachers, with messages like, "You made a difference and heroes teach." The accompanying note explained that Mason had selected these himself, insisting they be sent to the teacher who had looked beneath the surface to find the truth. As Rebecca placed one of the stickers on her teacher badge, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a simple observation about a student's unusual habit. What could easily have been dismissed as a harmless quirk had instead revealed a child in crisis, leading not only to his protection but to systemic changes that would benefit countless other vulnerable children and families. The following September, as Rebecca welcomed a new class of first graders, she carried with her the lessons learned from Mason's case. Her already keen observation skills had been further refined, her awareness of how children might communicate distress nonverbally heightened. When a new student arrived wearing long sleeves despite the late summer heat, she noticed immediately, not with alarm or suspicion, but with the appropriate attention such a detail warranted in light of her experience. Recovery hadn't been instant for Mason or his family. The physical injuries had healed quickly, but the emotional wounds required ongoing care and professional support. The systems, too, had changed: new awareness, better coordination, increased resources. Small but significant steps toward ensuring that other children would not need to hide their pain beneath colorful stickers, that other families might receive support before reaching the breaking point of violence. The story that had begun with stickers concealing bruises had transformed into something unexpected, not just an intervention that saved one child, but a catalyst for community-wide prevention efforts that would protect many others. As Rebecca guided her new students through their first week of first grade, she carried with her the sticker on her badge and the knowledge that sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we look beneath the surface, when we question the patterns that don't quite make sense, when we create enough safety that truth can finally emerge. Not an ending, but a new beginning for Mason, for his healing family, and for a community more attuned to the silent signals that children sometimes use when words are too frightening or forbidden. A reminder that healing is possible when caring adults pay attention to the small details that speak volumes, and when systems respond not just with protection but with support for all those affected by family violence. Thanks for watching till the end. If you enjoyed the story, give this video a like if you haven't already, and subscribe for more.